Hey guys, welcome to the Couple Nurses podcast with your hosts, Peter Findero and myself, Matt Solarchik. This is a podcast where we tackle hot nursing topics, one conversation at a time. Peter, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. A little sunburned. I know you guys can't see if you're on audio, but my nose is definitely looking red from the sun today. But today I'd like to welcome Amanda Guarniere, and I pronounced that correctly because we were going over this before the show. So how's it going, Amanda?
Going great. Thanks for having me.
Can you give us a little background of, how you became an NP and like just the background of you having nursing?
Sure. So I've been a nurse practitioner since 2011, and I actually, I had a previous bachelor's degree in another field. So I studied Italian literature and violin before I decided to go into nursing. And when I was a senior in college doing my undergrad, I realized that I didn't necessarily want to go into liberal arts as a profession, and I had an opportunity to really think about what I wanted to do with my career and decided that I really wanted to be of service to others. I was interested in the medical profession. I come from a family of nurses, and fortunately for me, there were these programs, these master's entry programs that were designed for people just like me who had previous bachelor's degrees in other fields who wanted to ultimately become a nurse practitioner. So I knew from the day that I entered nursing school, and actually from the day that I applied, that the end goal was to be an NP. So I applied to a handful of these master's entry NP programs, and I started in 2008. I moved to a new state. It was a full-time, on-campus, very intensive program. And when I first started, I did a combined women's health and adult NP program. So I've always been really passionate about reproductive health. So that was really my goal when I entered school, was to ultimately graduate and work in the women's health field. And while that wasn't what I ultimately ended up doing, I did graduate after 3 full-time years. So I got my RN first while I was in that program, worked as an RN while also getting my master's and my NP certification. And then it all kicked off after that.
Where did you work? Where did you work as an RN? And can you go through us the process of NP school? How was NP school? Was it competitive? How difficult was it compared to nursing school?
Sure. So it was all one program at one school. So when I applied, I ended up going to Yale School of Nursing, which was very competitive, and it was a combined program. So the first 18 months was essentially a condensed, accelerated BSN, because everybody in the program had previous bachelor's degrees, and we had the prerequisites. We had anatomy and physiology and statistics and all that. So it was essentially just doing a condensed 18-month RN program, and then we sat for our NCLEX. And after that, not everybody had to work, which is a little bit controversial. But I ended up working at a Planned Parenthood because I was in a women's health program. It aligned with what I wanted to do as an NP, and I worked in an outpatient surgery center, PACU, essentially. So because the program was full-time, the whole program was, I really could only work part-time per diem hours as an RN while I was also doing the NP portion of the program. So that rolled one into the next. So as soon as we were done with the RN coursework and sat for our NCLEX, we were already enrolled in those master's level courses. And there were a handful of nurses who had previous RN experience who joined us at the start of that master's portion of the program, but the majority of my class were all master's entry, meaning we had gone through that same program of doing the RN portion first.
When you started, or what made you kind of get into this field? Do you have that special story that some nurses share, or was it more you just kind of discovered your interest and your caring personality, or whatever the case might be?
Yeah, so I do have a little bit of a one moment when I figured it out. And I was a junior in college, and I was studying abroad in Italy because part of my program was a language program. So I had always done everything kind of by the books. I've always been a very high achiever, a rule follower, everything in sequence, everything I'm supposed to do, I've always done. So this was my first opportunity to really be outside of the norm and live in another country for 6 months and just totally be outside of my element. And it was the first time that I was able to really zoom out and look at my life from a different perspective. And it was during that time away, living on my own in a foreign country, that I realized that I had done everything up until that point based on what other people expected of me, not necessarily what I wanted to do. So that's when I really started thinking and imagining and dreaming. I had more white space in my life at that point, I guess you could say, because the coursework during the study abroad semester was definitely not as rigorous as the coursework that I had on campus in the States. So I had a lot of free time and time to really think and evaluate what I wanted with my life. And I had really been studying things that were hobbies and interests up until that point. I hadn't been studying anything that I thought was going to be a career or a vocation. So that was really when I was doing that soul searching of figuring out what to do. And I remember thinking, well, if I could just do anything, what would it be? And I feel like we don't really ask ourselves that question too often in our lives. I think we could probably ask it more and be better off from it. So that was really when I came to the realization that I had always been interested in the medical profession, but I had this mindset block that I wasn't good at science because I had a teacher who in high school had told me that I wasn't, or maybe they didn't even tell me, but my perception was that I was not good at science. It was the only class in school that I was not in the honors program for. And it just affected my mindset. So even though I was interested in the medical profession, I thought, well, can't do that because I'm not good at science. So I had to overcome that and basically take a chance and say, okay, if this is what I'm interested in and these programs exist that appear to be for people like me, I guess I better apply and see what happens. And so that's what I did.
I like how you kind of put that. And it's interesting because when we kind of go through school, no one ever tells us to ask those questions of like, how do you feel about this? It's always about, this is the right way to solve the problem. These are the rules that you should follow to solve that problem and obey the higher authority, right? In a way, in a nutshell, we never ask like, hey, how do you feel about this situation? And we never combine that soul searching, just like you say, to kind of maybe discover like what that path is for you or for anybody else.
Yeah, and it's crazy how like a teacher could be so like mentally damaging too. Like you remember from high school that a teacher told you that you're not good at science, like, and that has been carrying over with you like your whole life. So I understand that you're an NP in the ER. What made you choose ER? Do you like the fast-paced like environment? Because man and myself, we do ICU, and there's always that ER versus ICU like dilemma.
Yes.
And I have respect for ER. Like I thought about doing ER. ER is cool, but there's always been an issue between ICU and ER. What made you like choose the ER route for NP?
Yeah, so I kind of fell into it, to be totally honest. I was working in the outpatient setting. My first job was in college health. I worked there for a year and ultimately left because I felt like my patients were a little bit too healthy. I wasn't really learning too much or learning enough, I guess. And I was working in an outpatient practice. And while I was working there, I started to get really serious about paying down my student loans. So Yale was great. I got a great education, but it cost me, a house, basically. It cost me 130 grand. So I was really wanting to pick up the speed paying things off. So I said, well, I might as well get a second job. And the doctor that I worked for in the outpatient practice was friends with the director of the ER for the network that I worked for. And so one thing that led to another, they introduced me to him, and ultimately I picked up a part-time job just on the weekends, picking up some extra money so I could pay off the student loans. And it was a tremendously supportive physician group. We covered 5 different hospitals, and they took me under their wing and trained me on the job. So even though I had 0 ER experience as a nurse or an NP, they were willing to train me, which was a tremendous gift. So within about 6 months, I realized that I loved it a lot more than I loved the outpatient setting. And I left that outpatient job and asked to go full-time in the ER, and they accepted me for that. And it's felt really comfortable for me. And I think part of it is because I've always been such a rule follower, perfectionist, box ticker, that in the ER, you never know what's going to come in the door. And that's really exciting to me. And that keeps me interested. And I'm always learning something new. And I love that critical thinking. And the diagnosis part just it really gets my brain going. So it keeps me mentally stimulated. And ER has its moments in terms of you really have to weed through a lot of healthy people to find the sick ones. You have to deal with a lot of personality conflicts and behavioral situations. But ultimately, those instances that are truly life-saving moments are really unparalleled, I think, for me anyway.
So for example, we as nurses, if we have to get orders or anything, we kind of offload it to the doc or NP or PA in this case. What do you find very difficult about your job? If there is anything, is it the nurse-NP relationship, or maybe it's the doctor and NP relationship where you're having more stress added on to your life?
Yeah, so I've personally found that the nurse-NP relationship in the places that I've worked have gone very well. I am very respectful of the nurses who I work with, and I think that mutual respect goes a long way. I've seen things done a little bit differently from the NP side where things haven't gone so well, and I think it's a power play respect issue personally. So that has been great. I think that the NP physician relationship has been a bit challenging, particularly in the ER setting, because there's a lot of a big ER typically has a lot of different providers. So you could be working any given day with someone who you haven't seen in a few months, or maybe even someone you're working with for the first time. And as nurse practitioners, I feel like sometimes we have to, or oftentimes we have to earn our respect among our physician colleagues. So that can be challenging to kind of work alongside a doc and figure out what his or her practice preferences are. And the fact that depending on the location, we can practice pretty independently, but then once things get more critical, we usually involve the physician. So sometimes you can be kind of doing everything all on your own and have control over the situation. And then when you present the patient to the physician because they have to get admitted or be transferred to the unit or the trauma bay or something, it can be difficult because all of a sudden you've packaged your patient up and you're ready to hand them off or get the input, and the physician is, oh, well, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Which is understandable because ultimately their name is on the case too. But it can take a little bit of time of working with someone for them to figure out your style and ultimately know that you've done a good job up until that point.
Yeah, it's very similar to how like nurses and physicians have a relationship as well. It's like you gotta kind of know, like you said, you kind of gotta know each other in like a way, and it takes time to like build a relationship. But we can shift gears now.
I want to add one thing.
Go ahead.
So I love how there's always a doc in the ER, and the NP could kind of ask questions. One barrier that I had was we had NPs in the ICU at night. It was a smaller hospital, and physicians always left at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., and we had just the NPs. Sometimes the NPs did not want to bother a doctor for things, or they didn't want to come and start a line. We had to kind of push things over sometimes till the morning, or there's no central line. We have to start pressers, and your shift could go either good or bad. It depends which NP was on call. You knew if there's this one NP and you're just like, damn it, it's going to be a rough night, or I know I'm not going to get orders about this. So it's interesting how the dynamics could shift and how that relationship gets kind of curated,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like on my unit, I know when I first started nursing, we did not have any coverage overnight. Because even though we are cardiac ICU, we're more of like a heart failure unit's pretty specialized. So our heart failure doctors, they manage everybody. We have like 2 or 3 heart failure doctors that manage the whole unit, and they're very in-depth with like the patient. So they always want to get called. But the issue is, like when we call emergencies, it would take them some time to call back, especially if it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. and we have no coverage. So a lot of times what we found ourselves is calling anesthesia and, intubating patients just based on our decisions, and then kind of passing it along to the physician when every call calls back. Or if we need a line, we have to call a hospitalist from a different floor. And hopefully, like Matt said, depending on what kind of hospitalist is on, sometimes they would put a line in, sometimes they wouldn't, because technically it's not their unit and not their patient population. So they'll be hesitant, obviously, but they would help us out in emergencies. And they finally added NPs overnight. And that was like a lifesaver. They might not have the best attitudes, the best personalities, but just the fact that there's somebody there that follows the cardiologist and that follows the heart failure doctors, it's just so much more reassuring on our care. Like, things get done more efficiently, and more quickly, and it's not just us making decisions as nurses. Because even though we are very educated and we know what to do with these patients, we still can't just do things ourselves. We still need that order from the doctor. So it was really scary in the beginning, but right now it's pretty smooth. Yeah. So now I want to shift gears to, why did you start the Résumé Rx? So anybody out there is listening right now, or is going to be listening, this is probably where you should turn up your volume just a few notches, because everyone's going to need a resume in their life. Yeah. And so many times you're going to hear it.
That's true. And that's part of why I have a successful business, to be honest with you. So it was 2 years ago. I had recently gone part-time at work. I had twins, and twins are a lot of work. And so I wanted to go part-time. I paid off my loans finally. Nice. And I was looking for something to fill the time. Not that I was bored at home, but I was kind of looking for some opportunity to make a little money and to exercise my career muscle, but from home. So I had dabbled a little bit in some medical writing, freelance writing. And I was in a Facebook group one day, a nurse practitioner Facebook group. And I saw that someone had said, "Hey, I need help with my resume. Can anyone send me a screenshot?" And I sent a screenshot of my resume, which, I've kept up for years. It's something that's always come very naturally to me. And I got a ton of great feedback. "Wow, this is such a great resume. Where did you learn to do this?" And so I helped that one person. And when you see something and then you can't stop seeing it over and over, like you all of a sudden pay more attention. So every day that week, I would see another post in one of these Facebook groups for people looking for resume help. And that's when the idea hit me that, I could this could be my business idea that I was searching for. Mm-hmm. So I volunteered to help a few people in the Facebook group. I recruited some of my nurse friends and said, "Hey, let me redo your resume for you for free. Give me a testimonial." I wanted to make sure I could do it for other people, which I could. And so that's really how it started. So it started mostly through word of mouth and a couple Facebook groups. And as I started writing resumes for other people, I was doing different designs, and I saved those designs with the intent early on of creating resume templates, because I knew that I couldn't write everyone's resume for them. And even if I could, there would be people who would want really just to solve the problem of having the prompts and having the layout, right? Like, there were two problems to be solved. Someone who had no interest or time to do their resume whatsoever and was willing to pay a higher price for someone else to do it. And then the other problem of people who could put together, the phrasing and the words, but they really just needed a template to follow. So from the beginning, I kind of built out those two main avenues, or those two main offerings of my business.
That's amazing how people have different hobbies. One of them is, bike riding or longboarding, or they do maybe archery. I have no idea what our podcast listeners do. And you, for instance, you kind of found a pain point of somebody's and you kind of just worked around it. And I think you only do 3 days a week, correct? Or did during this time, 3 shifts?
Yeah, I was down to 2. Yeah, I was 20 hours. So it was 2 shifts a week.
And that's kind of awesome how, you're able to be a mom and also you're able to work on something that you cherish. And like the way I kind of see it about growing a business or whatever my interest is, it's like a little baby, right? And you have to kind of nurture it and take care of it and keep putting time into it. And then over time, I don't have a kid personally, right? But you just see this business or, whatever grow, and it's cool. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's been really great because I have 3 kids now, and 3 kids and a business. And the fact that I've been able to, birth all of those kids, birth the business, and grow all of them with some semblance of balance in my life has been exactly what I wanted. That's a struggle that a lot of women, a lot of moms go through, especially career women, is figuring out how to be the best at all the roles, or at least how to not feel like they're failing in one of the roles. And it's something that not a lot of us talk about. So I'm purposefully very, open about that, because I feel like if someone can hear me say it and say, oh gosh, that's exactly what I'm feeling, then I feel like that can help other women, other parents who are also going through that.
Yeah. How are you able to like manage all that time? Like, do you like have your own schedule? Do you use like an app? You just remember how to do everything?
Yeah, so I use Google Calendar, and my husband and I on the weekends, like on Sundays, we have like a 30-minute scheduling meeting, and
That's
we go
awesome.
through our meeting for the week. And since the pandemic, uh, I don't have a babysitter, and my kid's school was canceled. So we really had to figure out where I was going to be getting my work time in. So a few mornings a week, I get up early. He does wake up with the kids, and I work from 6 to 9 in the morning. I find that if I have 2 to 3 hours of focused time per day, that's all I need to work on the business. So as long as I schedule that in and get that time, then the rest of my time can be my parenting time and my other time. So that's really how
Mm.
I make it work.
So your husband is involved as well with everything that you're doing?
Yes. So he takes over parenting responsibilities
Okay.
when I have business things. So for example, we're recording this in the evening. So he is in charge of bedtime for all 3 kids so that I can come down and work. So I usually do interviews and videos and things around this time, and he'll take over that. And then a few mornings a week, he'll do wake up with the kids, breakfast, while I'm downstairs working. So we've made it work. We had it was different before the pandemic, but we've just kind of had to roll with the punches.
I'm gonna be a little nosy. So you said your kid's school got canceled. Did you have to homeschool them, or did they do Zoom? And like, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm fortunate. My kids they just turned 4. Okay, so they were in the 3-year-old pre-K class, and there is no sense of preschoolers learning remotely. My opinion and the evidence supports that there's just nothing learned when 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds learn virtually. So their preschool was just totally canceled starting in March. We didn't have to pay for the last quarter. And we just did kind of a home routine. We have a few learning activities that they do. Fortunately, I've got 2 of twins that are the same age, so from a social perspective, they do a lot of playing. I'm a big proponent of play-based learning at this age. So yeah, I feel like I'm fortunate in that I haven't had to make that big decision of virtual versus in school. But I will say that my kids are enrolled in preschool starting in September, and their preschool is converting to an outdoor forest school. So they will actually be outdoors for the majority of the day. And we've got a gear list of snowsuits and rain suits and all this outdoor gear. So they're really adapting in a way that feels comfortable to me. So I'm grateful for that too.
That's awesome. I know I never went to preschool. Did you go to preschool? I didn't go to preschool because I tell myself that I was so intelligent as a kid that I didn't need to go to preschool. Did you go to preschool?
I did,
You
man.
did?
I remember because I came from Poland. So that day I went to preschool. I was holding on to my mom's damn leg, man. I was crying, and teacher was pulling me, and then I had to just, make the leap and go to school, preschool. So it sucked, man.
Yeah, I don't know how that feels. I'm telling you, I was
Um,
smart as a kid.
jumping into like resumes. So like most of our listeners are either new grads or going into nursing or just took their NCLEX. What are like the biggest mistakes that you've noticed that like could sabotage your position into getting their first job, or what are the most recommended tips you have for when it comes to starting a resume?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the biggest mistakes I see is being too generic in the resume. So either not personalizing it for the position that you're applying to. So making one resume, having it be very basic and generic, one cover letter that doesn't say anything specific, and just sending that out to all the jobs. So that can be a bit of a problem in that the employers want to feel like you have chosen to apply to them. It's kind of like dating. If you were dating online and you were to send everybody the same message, not even reference their name, you can pick up when you're getting a mass message of some sorts. And people on the receiving end, they don't like that. Like, we like to feel like attention is being paid to us, and that travels into the workplace as well. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see. And along those same lines, when it comes to writing about the experience that you do have, being too generic about that too. So just kind of regurgitating the things of the nursing process that you learned can make for a pretty boring resume. Whereas I would rather you feature some sort of non-healthcare or non-nursing related experience that really tells a story about who you are, as opposed to just regurgitating the nursing process that you learned in your clinical rotations.
So I should definitely include that on a podcast host on my resume. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, why not?
I'm going to update it.
Yeah, even for travel nursing,
Yeah.
But maybe that's going to be an issue, because then they're going to not want you to record, or, they could follow about what you're saying. You better say good things about the hospital.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a fine line, because especially if you have any sort of social media presence, you want to also, say from the beginning that you understand that hospitals have social media policies, and you have to be a little bit careful when you have any sort of like online influence in your career role itself.
Yeah, because there's a few nurses at my hospital that got fired over like posting stuff on social media. Like, I think like there was a pediatric patient like died, and the family it wasn't really, the patient wasn't going to die either way. It wasn't my patient, it wasn't like in my unit or anything, but it was in a children's hospital, and they like were able to find out that the nurse who was taking care of the patient was on Instagram or Facebook for X amount of minutes, and then they were blaming like that as why their child died, but that wasn't really the case.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure how the lawsuit went or what happened, but she did ultimately get fired just because of they probably had no choice. So you gotta be careful, guys. We gotta be careful.
We do. I think that's like, I want to go back into the whole resume thing too, but from like an entrepreneur standpoint, for all the nurses listening, I think that's like the biggest hurdle for us, is to kind of be brave and just understand, okay, there's HIPAA, right? Because like when we started nursing, it seems like everything has to be a secret. We cannot talk about work, what happens, what we do. And it's almost like we're like going into an occult. And then it's okay to talk about things. It's okay to share stories. There's nurses that are feeling burnt out, but they can't hear it because, they can't relate, and only from their unit, let's just say. And we need to keep speaking out, just like with everything that we're experiencing with, I don't want to even say the C word, because our episodes get picked up on algorithm and deleted sometimes, but that kind of caused burnout, and, they kind of just give us some pizza and everything was okay. And, we're creating these platforms where we could share these things and potentially, connect and change the future, just like establishing patient ratios or like things like that.
Most definitely. Yeah. So Amanda, when you do have some time for yourself, when you're not busy with the family and with the business, what do you like doing on like your spare time?
So I don't get much of it these days, to be honest. But I do like to get outdoors whenever I can. We live in a nice wooded kind of recreational area, so I do like to get outside, and I've got a Peloton bike that I like to ride on, and I love to read. And lately I've been getting into journaling and trying some meditation and doing some personal development activities. I feel like those activities get the biggest return on my time investment, because they make me feel better. And when I'm better and healthier and happier, I show up better in all the different roles that I have.
Yeah. For the Résumé Rx, like if nurses were to come to you, is it better off for them to have like a standard baseline of like a resume, and then they send over to you and you edit it? Or you said you have a few templates, right? So how does that work? People just send you what they have and you kind of work with what you have, or do you start from like scratch with them?
Yeah, so the templates actually are completely hands-off from me. So you can go to my website, you can purchase the templates, decide which design you want to use, download it to your computer, and you've got the file, and it prompts you through every section. So it's completely do-it-yourself. So those are probably my most popular offer. I do have a training program that's self-study if you need a little bit more in-depth training on how to write each section. And then the more premium option is where I essentially write it from scratch. I send out a detailed questionnaire. I take any previous documents that you have, but essentially rebuild it as opposed to edit. So I like to start from scratch. I use one of my template designs of your choice, and that is usually what guides the final product. And we go back and forth with a couple resume revision edits. And yeah, that's the more, if you want nothing to do with writing your resume, then that's the option. But if you just kind of need some guidance and you're not sure where to start, the majority of people do really, really well with the templates.
Looks like you found two buyers. Worse. We need an update, man.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I would go probably to premium, just so it seems like you would do majority of the work for me. And I don't like doing resumes. I probably wrote a resume. I went to a resume course one time in college, basically stole their template and just did it whatever they did except with my information. And then I haven't really updated it because when I came out of nursing school, I was pretty lucky. I got a job right off the bat. So, they didn't really my unit has a lot of turnover rate, so like I understand why they really didn't pay attention much to my resume. First of all, I was a new grad, so it's all pretty much standardized. I didn't do much extracurricular stuff because I worked full time, but they were so in need of nurses where basically if you shut up, you basically got the job. So I got lucky there.
Interesting.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to outline a resume of what it should consist of, what would that be?
Yeah, so it should have your name and your demographics and your credentials. So if you're already a nurse, you would, put RN after your name. If you're still in school, you can put a little subheader that says registered nurse candidate or whatever is applicable to you. I like to include a professional summary or profile at the top. It's just a few sentences, like a short paragraph that talks about your interests, your value that you bring, and is personalized to the position that you're applying to. It's kind of like an elevator pitch or a highlight reel or words that I call that. And then it should include your education. So what school you went to, when you graduated, and if you are just getting out of school, you can include your clinical rotations there. You can include the details and the number of hours if you'd like. Some people decide to leave that off, which I think is totally fine because clinicals are pretty standardized these days. But let's say you don't have any work history and you don't have anything else to fill up the space, then I'd say definitely include your clinicals. You want to include your license and your certification information. So your nursing license, if you have any, you probably have CPR certifications. If you have any additional nursing certifications, include those. And then go into your work history. You can decide to write out some bullet points under each position. If you have some previous skills that you learned at a previous job that you want to highlight. And then you can also include any community service or professional advocacy, volunteerism, mission trips, that type of thing. Any of those extracurriculars I find really highlight you as an applicant because they show that you have an interest beyond just working, and it shows a little bit more about your character if it shows that you have volunteered or are taking some sort of leadership role in your profession or even in a hobby. If you're involved in a place of worship and you volunteer there or you have a leadership position somewhere, those are all things that can really tell more of your story. And ultimately that's the point of the resume, is to tell your story so that someone is interested enough to call you on the phone and give you an interview. And then that's the purpose of the resume. It doesn't get you the job, it gets you the interview. And then the interview is what gets you the job, in my opinion.
Is there like an ideal page length? Because I was always told one page, everything should be on one page. And if you want, do a cover letter. And I've like interviewed a few like upcoming nurses that we were going to hire. And a few times there was like, they came up with like a 4-page resume. And I thought that was too much. I like the 1 page, but is there like a standard or preferred amount of pages?
Yeah, so I don't have a hard and fast rule about it. I'll say that most new grad nurses and even most nurses within their first 5 years or so should be able to fit everything on a single page. That said, if you have really high quality experience, if you're involved in a lot of different activities, professional things, and everything that you're including has earned its space on the page, then by all means go on to a second page. But unless you're preparing an academic CV, which includes publications and presentations and all that other academic type stuff, you really shouldn't have to go beyond 2 pages. I've been an NP for 10 years and a nurse a year and a half longer than that, and I just have a 2-page.
Yeah, I don't know how this new nurse out of school busted out a 4-page resume. Like, I didn't even read past second page. I'm just like, what is she gonna tell me? Like, it was all volunteer stuff. Like, I ain't trying to read all this.
So I'm curious. So when you interviewed her, did the 4 pages match up to the person that she was?
I mean, she was great. We ended up hiring. I don't know if it was a him or her. I forgot the name, but we ended up hiring that person. But like I said, I didn't look at much of the resume. It's more of like if I'm interviewing her, the resume I can look at whenever. You know, it's more of like what she has to offer, like kind of her experience. I didn't really look if it matched up what she had on paper. I was just going for personality at that point.
Is there specific let's just say character traits? Because I feel like part of my resume I have like these character traits that I include, like teamwork, highly organized, and I'm like a team player and all that. Is there something that you recommend always putting on a nursing resume?
So I think that it is good to include those things, and I would choose your best things, and obviously the ones that are true. Like you wouldn't want to put teamwork or detail oriented if you weren't those things. I classify those as soft skills. So hard skills would be more procedural type skills, things that critical care type skills if you guys work in ICU, that type of thing. But soft skills I think are great to include. I usually put them in that professional summary section. So I usually choose 2 or 3 and use them as descriptors. So I might start off the summary saying highly dependable, detail-oriented, registered nurse who thrives in interprofessional care, delivery, seeking to transition to the emergency department. I know that wouldn't be true, but something like that. So that's usually a good place to include those soft skill qualities.
Have you dealt with any travel nurses at all?
In terms of clients
or creating resumes? Because me and Peter are planning on doing travel nursing in the next month. Is there anything specific that you want on a resume if you're applying for a new agency that it should be as a travel nurse with a resume?
Yes. So I actually have a travel nurse resume kit that I collaborated with another travel nurse who teaches nurses how to be travel nurses. So she and I have joined forces and we have a training and a template specifically for that. And what's different about travel nurse resumes is you cut out all the fluff, essentially. Not that regular resumes have a lot of fluff, but the formatting, basically the recruiter is looking for certain touch points, and you can format a travel nurse resume so that those things are front and center. So it means using like a table format rather than bullet points or a paragraph, so that they can see, your previous experience, your typical nurse to patient ratio, your availability, your shift requests, those types of logistical things that travel nurse recruiters are looking for that aren't as applicable when you're looking for traditional staff employment.
Interesting.
I would be, wouldn't mind even trying that out, the kit builder. What is your current obsession that you're currently doing, something that you're really enjoying in your free time with, the change of COVID and all that?
Yeah, so I'm really trying to create space, like just create space. That I'm working with a life coach, and she does some energy work as well. And it may seem a little bit woo-woo, but I'm totally into it. I love it. So, we've talked about what's missing in my life right now, and it's really space. I wake up very early with a baby who's ready to eat, and usually the day goes till very late until I, put the kids back to bed. And by the end, I just feel very tired and worn out. And like I haven't had re-energizing space throughout the day for myself. So I'm currently, trying to fit in short bursts of journaling, meditation, just quiet time so that I can recharge, because I find that to be so rejuvenating to me and my energy, so that I can really show up better and feel less drained at the end of the day. I find that there are many activities, especially parenting activities, that while I love them, they drain my energy, and that's just how it is, and that's okay. But if I know that, then it means that I need to take time to find energy giving activities to complement that. So that's what I'm currently obsessed with and focusing on in my spare time.
And you notice the difference?
Yeah, definitely. I notice a big difference. In particular with my creativity, and I really feel as though staying busy all the time can really stifle our creativity. So I'll notice, just in a period of quiet time, or if I take, a shower that's downstairs away from the rest of the family, and I kind of have some quiet time before and after, I have to keep a notebook nearby because I just have all these ideas that start flowing and I have to write them down. And, I made an interesting observation this past week because with 2020 and not going anywhere, there's been less time in the car. So I've noticed that when I do get time in the car, it feels like that space that I've been craving. And I feel like a lot of us aren't having those, a lot of us who aren't going to work every day aren't getting that transition time. And I think in that transition time is when we, go from one activity to the next, and when we have time to kind of compartmentalize the previous part of our day and prepare for the next part of our day. That commute is really valuable. And, I'm one of those people who's now working from home, essentially, as is my husband and a lot of other people that I know. And I've noticed that the lack of commute or the lack of transition time from one activity to the next has really kind of stifled creativity and been kind of suffocating. So I've been trying to be more aware of how valuable it is to take time as we go from one activity to the next.
I love that. I don't think I've heard anybody say that a commute is available. You always hear, I hate my commute. There's road rage. And, there's two type of people in the world, I guess we can say now, right? There's the people that are always rushing to get to the next task, right? And they're road raging. And then there's people like you and, other people that are taking time during this commute to reflect and, just like you say, compartmentalize and prepare for the next activity.
Yeah.
It's like a form of meditation almost. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And that's really what I was thinking about. And, before I stopped working clinically, in the past year, I worked overnights. So I really felt like that commute time for me was about 30 minutes, and it was, it was a transition time, it was a meditation time, and I was really truly preparing for, when I finished a shift, I was, closing that book of that shift that I had, putting everything away and preparing myself mentally to go home and to sleep, because I would go home, I would, eat a little something, say hi to my family, and then I'd go to bed. So it was kind of a wind down time. And I think that comparing it to meditation is really, it's one of the only times in our day that we're not doing something else. We're not, attached to our devices. And, I would listen to a podcast or listen to music, but that was pretty much the only thing that I was doing. And my mind just had that space to, transition to the next thing.
Yeah, because me and Matt have been doing like the whole mindfulness and meditative journey for like a few years now, like probably like at least 3. And I used to meditate in a sauna back when saunas were some of the people we used to go to. But now I just do it at home, or even like while I'm stretching before the gym, and just all positive things. Like there's nothing like you can't have like a bad meditation day or bad meditative period. It's all good things.
I think that's something we try to do to everybody, and hopefully the people that are listening started meditating. I hope so, because
it's about damn time.
Yeah, literally every single guest that we have on, we always like to touch up on the subject because it brings peace and happiness to a lot of people. Joy, you're finding clarity, we do, and I think more and more people need to find time for themselves. Just like you say, during this transition of 2020, whatever it is, we're commuting less, we're working more remote, and people need to find that disconnect because they're always in that same stimulus of environment.
Do you have any questions for us, Amanda?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you have any questions for us?
Oh,
On the spot,
Any,
hot seat.
She's like, oh my God, it's
Yeah.
an open mic.
Where's my
well,
notebook?
no. All right. No, if you guys have been doing meditation for a while, I would just love to know how to get to that place where the thoughts just don't invade all the time. That's what's so frustrating is, is that the point? Are we supposed to like hear the thoughts and then push them away? Or do you eventually get to a point where it's actual stillness for the whole time?
What I've noticed is, I'm not sure how long you've been doing it, but definitely consistency is probably the biggest thing. But it's rarely that I'm able to have complete silence in my head. It's usually narrowing it down to just like one voice. It's usually what happens with me. But there's a few times where it's complete silence. It's like silence, and it's like almost like you're in a trance and just like darkness, like not like a bad darkness, but it's like blank, and it's pretty calming. Sometimes I would see like just like this little ball of light, and I would kind of like chase it with my mind, and then just silence, and that was very relaxing. But most of the time, it's just condensing all those voices into one voice, and that's like yourself speaking to you, basically, is what I see it as.
Yeah, the way I kind of see it is if you try to empty it so much, sometimes you're so focused on it and you're judging yourself. You're judging that thought. And the point of meditation is to not be judgmental and let it flow, correct? So as you have that thought come in, just accept it for what it is, but let go of it. Don't judge it for what it is and just continue meditating. And sometimes when I finished a meditation, I'll kind of like reflect of maybe what I was thinking. And I'm like, you know what, Matt, you keep thinking about that damn thing. It must have really bothered you last week or whatever the case might be. And sometimes you use meditation of a way to think as well, right? And you kind of solve your own problems in a way too. So, and just like you say, consistency, it's like a muscle, correct? And it keeps getting better. And where I found like they had like, I guess the most best experience was when I did like a guided meditation. Specifically, it was a chakra one. I don't know if you're familiar with chakras.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the 7 energy centers. And as I was being guided to go through all 7 with them, I had this sensation of just, I don't know what it was. My nervous system was just firing. And I just had like this head rush going down my whole body. And I actually freaked out the first time I did it. So I like opened my eyes. But sometimes I'll get to that point and it's like bliss. It's interesting. That's my experience so far with it.
Good experience.
That's cool.
Amanda,
something to strive for.
Yeah. Where can people find you at? Do you have Instagram, website?
Oh, yeah. Yes. So I'm on Instagram at the Résumé Rx and web address, theresumerx.com. Those are the best places to get a hold of me.
And I know if people are looking forward to getting the resume done ASAP, I know you do some personal calls, correct? And you could kind of hop on a call with somebody and you could help them out with the resume.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda, for being on. Anything you want to add on, Petey?
No, but I'm probably going to redo my resume, so maybe we'll probably be in touch in the next few months.
Sounds good. I'll be here.
Like I said, probably a premium package,
Yeah.
All right, Amanda, thank you for being on.
Of course. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Bye.